And let's get to the news of the day, which kind of came out of the blue, Peter, but you had something in Football Morning in America a week and a half ago saying this could happen, and happen it has. For the third time in his career, Brandin Cooks has been traded. He was a first-round pick in 2014, traded for a first-round pick in 2017, traded for a first-round pick in 2018. Now, he's only traded for a second-round pick. Cooks, along with a 2022 fourth-rounder, goes from the Rams to the Texans. Peter, your reaction when you saw the news?
Well, Mike, Brandin Cooks clearly has had one of the strangest careers in NFL history, and that is not hyperbole. Just consider this. He's drafted 20th overall, and in the intervening time over the last 4 years, Brandin Cooks has been traded 3 times for the 32nd pick in the draft, for the 23rd pick in the draft, and now for the 57th pick in the draft. This guy's 26 years old, Mike, and teams right now have spent 3 first-round picks and a second-round pick in trading him 3 times since he was drafted. So it's absolutely crazy. I will just say a couple of things about why I believe this happened. And you're right, Mike. A week and a half ago, I wrote about the possibility that Brandin Cooks would be traded. 2 NFL teams reached out to me in the 24 hours after that, one saying it's absolutely not going to happen because the Rams want too much, and the other saying, what would be your gut feeling, the bottom line as to what gets this done? And at the time, my feeling was that if you offered in the range of about the 60th pick in the draft, that was going to get the Rams interested. And now, because it lasted another week or so, and they definitely wanted to get this done before the draft, I think the Rams basically said, okay, we'll throw in a 4, a future 4, in order to be able to get this done. So the Rams now have more ammunition, because what the Rams need to do right now, the Rams have to stock up on younger, low-cost players on their team, Mike, because as you know, their cap situation is onerous. That's one of the reasons why they were driven to get rid of Cooks. And number 2, obviously, the Houston Texans, the Houston Texans needed this after getting rid of DeAndre Hopkins.
And let's start with the Texans, because from their perspective, they moved DeAndre Hopkins. There's a flip-flop of fourth-round picks. Texans send theirs this year, get back the Cardinals next year, but they get David Johnson and a second-round pick, a higher second-round pick than the one they sent to Brandin Cooks. So they send a lower second-round pick for Brandin Cooks. They come out of it with David Johnson, an upgraded second-round pick, and Brandin Cooks. I don't know that replaces DeAndre Hopkins, because I don't know that Brandin Cooks is in the same stratosphere as DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think he is. He definitely wasn't last year. 14 games, less than 600 receiving yards. Brandin Cooks was largely a non-factor last year. And you throw on top of it, Peter, he's had 4 concussions since he was knocked out cold during Super Bowl 52 as a member of the New England Patriots when he was hit by Malcolm Jenkins. 4 concussions in a relatively short period of time. That is a huge red flag. So I don't know that the Texans should feel good about this. I almost feel like the Texans reacted to the intense criticism of trading DeAndre Hopkins and decided we better go get a veteran receiver. Let's go find one anywhere we can to placate our fans, to placate the media, and maybe to placate quarterback Deshaun Watson.
Well, Mike, we've talked about it on this show several times, about the strength of the receiving class in this draft. And I want you just to think of, in 2019 in the draft, the draft was very strong at wide receiver. So strong that DK Metcalf, who played like a first-rounder, was picked 64th overall. And so strong that Terry McLaurin in Washington, who was the 76th pick in the draft, also played like a first-rounder in 2019. So it's going to be very interesting to see. I have already written myself a note, Mike, on things to follow in the draft. What receivers were available at pick number 57? And I'm going to be paying very close attention to that, because, look, that's how this trade is going to be measured. You took You sent basically the 57th pick in the draft to be able to get Brandin Cooks. So on the board at that time, what receivers? This is a stacked draft for wide receivers. So to me, what are you going to be giving up that you could have had in the draft? And that's going to be the most interesting thing to watch, I think, for the Houston Texans in this draft.
Consider this. Ravens GM Eric DeCosta said yesterday that we think this year there's a really good chance to get a guy that can probably be a starter at receiver in the 5th round of the draft. So, again, a curious move by the Texans and their coach/GM Bill O'Brien to give up that pick number 57 to get Brandin Cooks and his $8 million salary that's already fully guaranteed. Now, let's flip it over to the Rams' perspective. You mentioned the fact that they need young, cheap talent because of their cap situation. Well, compounding their cap situation is a $21 million plus hit that they're taking for trading Brandin Cooks. They held on to him long enough where they had to pay him another $4 million in a roster bonus mid-March because they hadn't traded him before that money became due. And all told, $40.54 million for 2 seasons with Brandin Cooks. That, Peter, the Rams right now quietly are putting together some of the worst contracts we've seen in recent years. From Brandin Cooks to the Todd Gurley debacle to this Jared Goff ball and chain they're carrying around. It's unbelievable to me how a team that not that long ago was at the very top of the NFC with kind of this vibe that they're here to stay. These huge contracts are dragging the Rams down to the point where they've got to do kind of a change the tire on a moving car rebuild if they want to continue to be competitive in the NFC West.
I think what you're talking about, Mike, basically happened after, you remember a year ago, basically, that when Sean McVay was re-upped, one of the first things he said internally is, now I want to make sure that we keep Jared Goff. And it's clear that they were so fervent for Jared Goff a year ago. And who knows? We'll see if that pays off. We'll see if that contract works long-term. Clearly, after Goff's performance in 2019, there are questions about whether that's going to be a smart long-term contract or not. So we'll see. But I believe that what happened with the Brandin Cooks trade, when he was acquired from New England, they were very enthusiastic about getting him. They thought that he was going to be a solid number 1 for the next 4 or 5 years. And I believe, and I have not talked to anybody there since this trade happened last night, but I believe that their decisions with Brandin Cooks have been influenced. They paid him like a number 1 receiver, and then he wasn't one last year in part because of his injury history. So now going forward, the really interesting thing to see is, are they going to be able to develop those low-cost players that have been absolutely vital to rebuilds of other really good teams in the past? And they're crucial to this team because look at every other team in the NFC West. Look at Arizona rising right now. The 49ers are obviously going to be good for a long time. Seattle's always good. The Rams have to be really, really careful because they might be in the most competitive division in football right now.
As Frank Costanza once said, I'm like a phoenix rising in Arizona. And you're right. The Cardinals on their way up in the NFC West, and the Rams easily could get left in the dust. And Peter, number 1 tailback gone with a contract that was, in hindsight, a gigantic mistake. And the Cooks deal was done sight unseen. They gave up the first-round pick, and they paid him huge money. Again, $40.54 million for 2 seasons of football. That was a huge mistake. And as you said, the Jared Goff contract starting to look like maybe it was a mistake too. So who's their number 1 receiver? Is he not on the roster at this point?
Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, I would think, are the co-number 1s right now. And Mike, that's another issue. They love Cooper Kupp, and they're going to have to pay him too. And at some point, when you pay so many people, at some point, a guy comes up to get paid, and you say, I love you. I wish we could pay you, and we can't. I'm not saying that's going to happen with Kupp, but they're going to have to bite the bullet pretty soon on a really good player who they'd like to keep, but they just can't.
Yeah, they should have done it with Todd Gurley in hindsight, and they still owe him some money from a roster bonus that came due last month, and I did some more digging on that yesterday. They owe him money, period, and they haven't paid it, and they've leaked to ESPN.com that they think they're in the right. My understanding is they are clearly in the wrong, so it is a strange time for the LA Rams and the way they've been doing business.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.